is that time of the year again, boils and ghouls, the season of the witch, the season of All Hallows Eve. I am here for my third annual 31 movies for every day in October. October is my birthday month. Fall is my favorite season. Horror is my life. So I am in a glorious mood. Get ready to add to your spooky season watch list because I have 31 horror movies that will set the October Halloween fall mood. And of course, I have a little something for every horror taste. Whether you are in the mood for comedy horror, more thriller leaning horror, or the more hardcore, disturbing, gore-filled horror, I got you. In no particular order, let's get right into my list of 31 horror movies for every day in October. Time lapse from 2014 listed as sci-fi horror. 3 friends discover a mysterious machine that takes pictures 24 hours into the future and conspire to use it for personal gain until disturbing and dangerous images begin to develop. Really great pacing and a story that will keep you engaged from top to bottom. The Devil's Candy from 2015, listed as horror thriller. A struggling painter ends up possessed by dark forces after he and his family move into their dream home in rural Texas. This movie was a lot darker than I thought it would be, and I was extremely impressed throughout. But it is unfortunately one of those really great movies with a not so great ending. But I will say you will either hate the ending or you'll love the ending. A Dark Song from 2016, listed as folk horror. A determined young woman and a damaged occultist risk their lives and souls to perform a dangerous ritual that will grant them what they want. I found this premise to be pretty unique and interesting. It is a slow burn and not very action-packed, but it is extremely intriguing. The performances are out of this world. It will have you hooked. This is a really dark, tense, creepy atmosphere, and the payoff is absolutely worth it in the end. Vicious Fun from 2020, listed as comedy horror. Joe finds himself unwittingly trapped in a self-help group for serial killers. With no other choice, Joe attempts to blend in or risk becoming the next victim. I had a lot more fun with this movie than I thought I would. I am pretty sick of the 80s nostalgia films, but for someone who comedy horror is my least fave subgenre, this was a gem. Also, The Night Watchman from 2017, another gem that is comedy horror. 3 inept night watchmen, aided by a young rookie and fearless tabloid journalist, fight an epic battle for their lives against a horde of hungry vampires. I always sum this movie up by saying, the best way to sum this movie up, this is how I always do it. Imagine the dumbest people you know fighting vampires. That is this movie in a nutshell. The characters are way more endearing than I would have ever imagined they could be. And there are some genuine laugh out loud moments. I actually felt for these characters and cared if they lived or died. Excisions from 2012, listed as body horror. A disturbed, delusional high school student with aspirations of a career in medicine goes to extremes to earn the approval of her controlling mother. And that doesn't even begin to give you the gist of this movie. I was on the fence about this, adding this to the list. When I first watched it, I wasn't very enthralled. It plays out more like a teen family drama with some moments of like disturbing imagery from her dreams mixed in. Even though I wasn't enamored with this movie, I really enjoyed the ending, even though the ending is pretty predictable. But I wanted to add this because I can see a lot of people really liking this. Slow burn it takes a lot for them to win me over. Wolf Creek 2 from 2013, slasher horror. The Outback once again becomes a place of horror as another unwitting tourist becomes the prey for crazed serial killing pig hunter Mick Taylor. This is a sequel that surpassed the original in my humble opinion, and it's the kind of sequel where you don't necessarily have to see the original to enjoy this one. It's not anything groundbreaking, but it's gory and it's fun. Howl from 2015, werewolf horror. When passengers on a train are attacked by a creature, they must band together in order to survive until morning. If you have been on my channel for any amount of time, then you know I love bad horror. I did my video on my top 10 guilty pleasure horror movies. How isn't a bad movie? I feel like it's really just kind of a generic run-of-the-mill horror movie, but you have werewolves, you have blood, you have gore, and a group of people trapped in an isolated location fighting for their lives. You don't need much more than that, okay? I think this is a really fun movie. Priest from 2011. A warrior priest disobeys church law to track down a pack of vampires who have kidnapped his niece. Every aspect of this movie is pretty much things we have seen 100 times before, but I enjoy the cast and the idea of these warrior priests and the world that's created here. Solid vampire action and some good fight scenes make up for the movie's shortcomings. Rust Creek from 2018. This one leans more into thriller than horror. A college student gets lost on her way to a job interview. A wrong turn leaves her stranded deep in the Kentucky forest, fighting for her life against a band of ruthless outlaws. You will be annoyed, okay, at first, with our lead and her nonsensical decisions, but hang on, okay, stay in there. This lost in the woods, fighting for your life, villains hunting down the stranded college kid actually plays out in a really entertaining way. Severance from 2006 slasher comedy horror. During a team building retreat in the mountains, a group of sales reps are hunted down one by one. You definitely get your fill of gore and violence with this one, and it has a good mix of dark comedy and some genuinely tense moments. Hatchet from 2006. When a group of tourists in a New Orleans haunted swamp tour find themselves stranded in the wilderness, their evening of fun and spooks turns into a horrific nightmare. I consider this more like a fun Halloween watch. I think Victor Crowley is a great horror villain trapped in a bad horror movie. This one does not lack in blood and how gruesome the kills are. Ganja and Hess from 1973. After being stabbed with an ancient germ-infested knife, a doctor's assistant finds himself with an insatiable desire for blood. This was recommended during a recent episode of my live horror panel, KillerCon, one of the movies that is the foundation of Black horror. I think every horror fan should watch Ganja and Hess. It is definitely that early, like, classic foundational film that you have to watch. Censor from 2011, listed as psychological horror. After viewing a strangely familiar video, Enid, a film censor, sets out to solve the past mystery of her sister's disappearance, embarking on a quest that dissolves the line between fiction and reality. This is one of those movies where I kind of love the idea of the movie a lot more than the actual execution of the movie, but I consider this a spooky season watch you have to see at least once. It's very trippy, it's very interesting. Everything just don't come together like it should. Would You Rather from 2012. Desperate to help her ailing brother, a young woman unknowingly agrees to compete in a deadly game of Would You Rather, hosted by a sadistic aristocrat. There is a lot that I couldn't stand about this movie. I mean, you have a table full of people and still just one token black character at the table. The movie is extremely predictable, and there's a black doctor who they just wasted in the movie. There's something with him that ends up pointless as hell. But I really enjoyed this movie despite the things that got on my nerve. I did find the ride, though, a lot more fun than the destination. Despite all the things I didn't like, I think this is a really great, worthy film. Maybe I shouldn't have put really on that. It's a or great. It's a good, worthy film. The Pyramid from 2017. An archaeological team attempts to unlock the secrets of a lost pyramid, only to find themselves hunted by an insidious creature. I ended up lying. recently, and I didn't even realize it. In my video for the best horror movies coming to stream in October, I said that the only two found footage movies that I have ever liked is As Above, So Below, and Incantation. I hate found footage, but I completely forgot about this movie, The Pyramid. This is one of those bad movies that I think is great and enjoyable, but it is found footage, so I guess there are 3 found footage movies in the world that I enjoy. You can still throw the entire subgenre away though. Girl Gone Bad from 2022. When 16-year-old Samantha has the house to herself over the weekend, she plans a romantic night for her and her girlfriend. However, when an intruder makes his way into her home, it is fight or flight. If they took the stupid flashbacks out of this movie, it would go up a notch. There are way too many flashbacks of the relationship between the 2 girls. It's annoying. They're just not good moments. They're not pertinent flashbacks, and they just mess up the whole flow. However, Girl Gone Bad is a so bad it's good watch that I enjoy. And there's actually some really solid stuff here. I've seen this movie twice now at this point, and I doubt I'll ever watch it again, or maybe at least not for a few years. But I would recommend adding it to your watch list if you've never seen it. The dynamic between the teen girl and the intruder, their cat and mouse back and forth fight is the highlight. If you're like me and you are not a fan of this new elevated horror wave, which I hate that term. Horror has always had something to say, but this new elevated horror wave just feels, the movies feel real pretentious to me. It's just not my personal taste. I always think about Scream 5 when Tara is on her scream call. I'm Ghostface when it comes to the elevated movies. However, I finally got around to watching one of the elevated horror movies that people rave about earlier this year, and I loved it. So if you're like me and you roll your eyes at these movies, just trust me on this one. The Witch from 2015. A family in 1630s England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession. I enjoyed this immensely. Now, the language was a bit hard for me. I had to read the captions like this was a foreign film, child, because, you know, they talking, you know. It's 1630s. A classic horror story from 2011. Strangers traveling in southern Italy become stranded in the woods where they must fight desperately to get out alive. Netflix originals are literally hit or miss, and a classic horror story is one of the hits. Doom from 2005. I don't know anything about video games. That is not my ministry. Doom is a video game adaptation, so I can't give you no comparisons. I just know I love the movie. Space Marines are sent to investigate strange events at a research facility on Mars, but find themselves at the mercy of genetically enhanced killing machines. A likable ensemble cast. The typical ragtag team of characters. Gore, violence, and my fave genre mix. Action horror. I guess you could call this a guilty pleasure watch, but when I was a teenager, when this came out, I thought this was genuinely a good film, and I still enjoy it today. Post from 2001. 2 groups of people discover evidence that suggests spirits may be trying to invade the human world through the internet. I do not acknowledge the horrid American remake that came out a few years after this, okay? When I talk about how much I love foreign horror, how much I love Japanese horror, Post is on the Mount Rushmore. And for anyone wanting to get into foreign horror films, this is always the one I recommend. We Summon the Darkness from 2019. 3 best friends embark on a road trip to a heavy metal show where they bond with 3 aspiring musicians and head off to one of the girls' country home for an after party. I read a review on this movie once that sums it up perfectly. We summon the darkness, didn't summon good writers. I love this movie. It's a lot of fun. It starts off strong. I like how they try to subvert expectations. The writing is really weak, but This has become one of my fun, like, yearly Halloween season watches. Possessor from 2020. An agent works for a secretive organization that uses brain implant technology to inhabit other people's bodies, ultimately driving them to commit assassinations for high-paying clients. This is one of those movies where on first watch, I felt like maybe I'm not smart enough for this. Like on first watch, I was intrigued, engaged, impressed, blown away, but didn't quite know how I felt about the movie because I couldn't really wrap my head around everything. I love how this movie had the guts to do some things that I would not expect movies to do. This is definitely a movie you have to pay attention to while you watch. Okay, this ain't the fun Halloween night watch. You gotta be sitting down, paying attention. And it is close to being my #1 favorite movie of the current decade. The Ninth Gate from 1999, more thriller than horror. A rare book dealer is hired to find the last 2 copies of a text that holds the key to summoning the devil. Things change when he finds himself at the heart of paranormal events. This has a very gothic horror feel, one of those solid horror thrillers that I never hear anyone talk about. I will say the journey might be more fun than the destination for some people. The Invitation from 2015. When a man accepts an invitation to a dinner party hosted by his ex-wife, the unsettling past reopens old wounds and creates new tensions. I was honestly a little bored with this in certain spots. I felt like the dinner party dragged on and I was ready to get to because you know something sinister is up. But if you're not like me and you know, like you have more patience for a slow burn, you might not feel the same way. Ultimately, I was kind of blown away with this movie though. I really enjoyed it. If you can get through the slow start, I think it definitely pays off. Spectral from 2016, a sci-fi thriller centered on a special ops team that is dispatched to fight supernatural beings. Turn off your brain. Don't think too much into things. Just sit back and be entertained. This movie is way more entertaining than it has any right to be. Virus from 1999. After outrunning a typhoon at sea, a strong-willed tugboat navigator and her crew discover a high-tech alien life form that's taking control of a Russian research vessel and aims to destroy on a massive scale. Very 90s B-movie type of entertainment with Virus. The whole Underworld franchise, just throw that on. The perfect binge for an all-night spooky season watch. And now I am going to get into some new 2024 movies that are perfect for spooky season. Infested. Residents of a rundown French apartment building battle against an army of deadly, rapidly reproducing spiders. This starts a little slow, but quickly became my favorite spider horror of all time. And Arachnophobia was like my favorite childhood movie. I love eight-legged freaks, but this is #1. This is the most effective spider horror I have ever seen in my life. Oddity, a psychic medium attempts to uncover the truth behind her sister's murder at the site of the crime. I did a full video on this movie. Oddity is right now my #1 favorite movie of 2024. I feel like this will now be a yearly Halloween watch. Such a perfect atmosphere for fall and spooky season. And those are my 31 horror movies for every day in October for 2024. And giving you the whole Underworld franchise, that's more than 31 movies. Okay, you're gonna get werewolves, vampires, action, badass Selena. So you got more than 31 in this one, and something for all tastes and moods. And I included a lot of bad horror here that I find entertaining. Be sure to go back and check out my 2022 and 2023 31 horror movies for every day in October for more recommendations filled with less bad horror movies. I'm just in a bad horror movie like mood this year. I will add my Halloween playlist on the end screen so you can binge all my horror content over the last few years, from the best bad horror movies, the best horror series, and everything in between. Great horror, groundbreaking horror, entertaining, brainless horror, bad, so good horror. Hopefully, I haven't repeated any movies. I really need to find a way to keep better track of the horror movies I recommend for Halloween each year. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit like, share this video, drop down in the comments and let me know you're here and what movies have I recommended that you will be adding to your spooky season watch list. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Goodbye.